Tricky. This problem is a tricky. So just like all the others, we're starting with distribution, but wait, hold on a second. There's no number out front of the parentheses. Oh, but there is. Just like when we see that negative x, that negative y, we know that a floating negative is not just a floating negative. There is really a negative 1 outside of those parentheses for us to distribute. So negative 1 times, weird fraction. It's okay, don't freak out, it'll be okay, I promise. So a negative 1 times that weird fraction is just going to be negative that weird fraction, because a negative times positive is a negative. So I have negative x over 8. And actually, when we're doing that, we can give that negative sign to the number. Always give it to the number there, wherever that number is. So we're going to give it to the 8. We're going to make that x divided by negative 8. And then negative 1, careful here, times a negative 5 is a positive 5. So yeah, when you're multiplying by that negative or that negative 1, all it's doing is changing the sign of each piece. This x divided by 8 was positive, now it's negative. The 5 was negative, now it's positive. Boom sauce. So continue as normal. Step 2 tells us to get the x term by itself, which would be the x divided by 8 piece, which means we need to deal with that 5. And I'm really bad at remembering to draw my line down the middle. The opposite of a plus 5 or a positive 5 over there would be minus 5 or negative 5. So we're going to subtract 5 from both sides, leaving us with x over negative 8 is equal to negative 107 minus 5 more is a negative 112. And so, last step, isolate that variable. The negative 8 is the last thing preventing the x from being by itself. What operation does that fraction bar represent, or what operation is going on between the x and the negative 8? That would be division. The opposite or the inverse operation of division is multiplication. So I am going to multiply both sides by negative 8. My times negative 8 and divided by negative 8 cancel out like I wanted. That's the whole point of it. And I'm left with x equals, and whatever a negative 112 times negative 8 is, which I do not want to do in my head. You totally can if you want to, but you don't have to. And a negative times a negative is a positive, so we have x equals 896. And last but not least, this final check here. And keep in mind, when you're looking at your homework problems or those practice problems, you only need to do the check for the ones that I ask you for it. You don't need to do it for all of them, unless you really want to, of course. Okay, so rewriting my original equation as I always do for the first step of a check. Doing it again because I like to. Minus 5 equals negative 107, swoop. In top of those parentheses, those aren't going to be big enough parentheses. We have a giant number up there. Is my 896. So again, PEMDAS or GEMS or that order of operations. Excuse me. Inside my groupings first, and inside the groupings, I'm starting with that division. So 896 divided by 8 is going to be 112. Bloop. 112 minus 5 gets me back to my 107. And negative 1 times 107 is negative 107, making that equal to negative 107, making my answer check out, which is absolutely fabulous. So, that's it, that's all, ladies and gents. Try some of those practice problems. Make sure you show all of your work for full credit. Malinowski, out.